Alright guys, now this time it's time to review Rocky 5. That's right, the wait is over. Now it's time to review Rocky 5. Now this movie was made back in 1990, 5 years after Rocky 4 was made. What was to come next? Well, fun fact, Rocky 4 was originally going to end with Rocky dying, but since that it would end up being bad, they of course would have to continue the story. So, what would happen next after Rocky succeeded living as a champion, going obstacles, beating up bigger, stronger guys, and does everything at will with all of his heart and power and soul and compassion towards everything he does. And that's exactly what Rocky does. So, what happens next? Well, let's talk about what happens in this movie. Now, it begins immediately showing flashbacks from the Ivan Drago fight, and then suddenly Rocky starts shaking in his shower room, and of course his trainer Tony, or Duke, or whatever, Tony whatever in this movie, congratulates Rocky for avenging Apollo's death. And then Adrian shows up trying to tell Rocky that he needs to see a doctor, but then he just refuses to. He just wanted to go home, and he accidentally calls Adrian Mickey. So after that, they came back home on a plane, and then suddenly the Rocky theme played by some sort of marching band. Now that's a weird flaw. Talk about breaking the fourth wall. They played the Rocky theme in the movie with the marching band, and they did that as well in Rocky 3. That's so weird. And not only is that weird, take a look at his son, Rocky's son, Rocky Jr. Well, he's a lot older too. In the previous movie, Rocky Jr. was like 8 or 9, while here in this movie, he's like either 14 or 15. Well, it was because that Rocky's son is now just a little older really quick, past puberty, and Sylvester Stallone used his real-life deceased son Sage to play as Rocky Jr., which in my opinion, not that much of a good choice, and in some people's opinions, I've heard, they think it's lazy filmmaking. But, of course, Rocky's Jr. is supposed to be like 9 or 10, and he still looks like an elementary kid, by the way. So, Rocky and his son were reuniting, and then they had a press conference, and then suddenly this one guy, George Washington Duke, which is supposed to be a Don King ripoff, appears, trying to convince Rocky to get back into the ring. So he ignores him, and then they come back home to their huge mansion, and then suddenly this happens. Paulie just, he really did something bad, because we're going to explain something else in the back. This is so hard to describe. They go bankrupt, right? Well, this explains. Alright, so you see Rocky right here in the cover at the gym, and this explains a little bit more. So, if you could read real closely, it says that, well, let's see. He lost all the money by an unscrupulous financial advisor, because Paulie must have, gave some money to, to this accountant, whatever, They just lost money, that's all I have to say. Rocky went bankrupt. They had to go back to the old town of Philly, back to Paulie's old house from the first movie. Yeah, so that's all I have to say about the bankruptcy, and not only that, Rocky got brain damage by the hands of Ivan Drago, because Ivan Drago gave him over hundreds of hits. Wow. So they went bankrupt, Rocky got brain damage, and they had to move back to their neighborhood. And then suddenly, just like how they ran into Duke, not the trainer, the Don King guy, I'm talking about the new guy who appears, which is Tommy Gunn, played by former boxer who also died, Tommy Morrison. He appears trying to convince Rocky to train him, but then suddenly, out of nowhere, he does start training him, and then Rocky Jr. is just ignored, and since that Rocky Jr. had to go to a new school, there were bullies that had to pick on him, and he wanted his dad to help him, which was kind of useless and also a little lazy, because the movie focuses a little bit more with Tommy Gunn and Rocky Jr., which really disappointed a lot of fans. And while that's going on, when Rocky was packing all his stuff, looking at all the old stuff that he used to wear, he started wearing the same hat and jacket that he used to wear, and went back to Mickey's gym, because that's the only asset that he can own. He has a flashback scene with Mickey, which makes it the last appearance of Burgess Meredith before his death in 1997. he says something about, getting up because Mickey loves him, and he gives him the necklace, the cufflink that looks like a boxing glove. Yeah, and he still has it, and he gave it to Rocky Jr. at the end. He was supposed to give it to Tommy Gunn, but then he gave it to Rocky Jr. instead. So Polly wanted to, once again try to protect Rocky at the very end of the movie, and Polly's once again that same snooty brother-in-law, and Rocky Jr. starts training by himself, trying to beat the school bully while Rocky trains Tommy Gunn. And since that Tommy Gunn is one of the younger guys, he became the new world heavyweight champion, beating the Union Cane guy. Union Cane? He was the paper champion who didn't really win it from Rocky after he retired. So of course Duke takes control of Tommy, which upsets Rocky, and then Rocky starts having a little flashback of Ivan Drago, and then suddenly Adrian shows up to him, and this took place right around Christmas time, I believe, and Adrian makes one of the best speeches ever, along with her speech from the third movie, where he tells Rocky that he has heart and not muscle. And he beat every single opponent with all that compassion, which really makes Rocky a great champion. And I agree, Adrian is such a big helper. So Rocky went up to Rocky Jr. to apologize and reconcile with him, so they can be friends again and get closer, because that's what every father should do to their children, bond with them and have fun. And that turns out good. But then suddenly when Tommy gets into a press conference after winning the championship, everyone doesn't respect him because he's not a real champion. He didn't win it from Rocky Balboa, and he's not really a real champion. So, of course, Duke convinces Tommy to fight Rocky in a street fight. Now, this is where the movie gets a little bit entertaining, but still flawed. Rocky's at the bar, the same bar that he went to in the first movie, and then suddenly Tommy calls him out for a fight. Paulie tries to protect him, but then he gets sucker punched by Tommy, and then Rocky says, "My ring's outside." That's what he said, and then suddenly the fight begins. Rocky gets down, hears Mickey saying him to get up while he has flashbacks of Ivan Drago beating him up, as well as Apollo, and then he gets up, beats up, I'm getting confused now. He's beating up Tommy, and then finally wins the street fight, and then sucker punches Duke for being such a douchebag to everyone, and then that's how it ends. Now, this is kind of weird because it's just a street fight. What does it have to do with, becoming a real champion? All you have to do is just prove that you're champion, and that's it. You don't have to fight the former champion who got brain damage. Oh yeah, and plus, in the original script for Rocky V, Rocky was supposed to die in the street fight. Yeah, Rocky was supposed to die in the street fight, which was also another change that Stallone thought that wasn't good. So they had to make him win, but it was still not good. And in the alternative ending, Rocky shook hands with Tommy Gunn. There was a director's cut. And speaking of director, John Avildsen returned, which makes it the second of the Rocky movies to have John Avildsen as the director, while Rocky directed the second, third, fourth, and sixth movie. So that's all I have to say about the director. And what about Stallone himself? Well, he still wrote all the Rocky movies except for Creed, which will be out later this November. And then there's the last appearances of characters like Burgess Meredith, his last appearance, and as well as Talia Shire's last appearance, because her character was written out from the sixth movie, so they had to make it more emotional without Adrian being involved. That's why Adrian didn't come back, because she had to get killed off because it wouldn't be emotional enough in the sixth movie. The ending where Rocky runs up the steps with his son, gives him the necklace, looks away, and then the camera zooms out of the statue. Very satisfying an ending, but not for an entire movie series, because this was supposed to be the original ending to the entire Rocky series, which disappointed a lot of fans. But thank God, 16 years later in 2006, there was Rocky Balboa, aka Rocky 6. So that's all I have to say about this movie. And one more thing, this was the second movie in the entire Rocky series to not have Gonna Fly Now, a full version. Gonna Fly Now was only played in an instrumental version after the street fight and at the very beginning of the movie when Rocky went off this plane, and there was no full training montage of Rocky running up the steps. Instead, we get a bunch of early rap music from the 90s, because since this was made in 1990, they had to throw in a lot of MC Hammer and all that early rap. So, yeah. Thank God 2006 this Rocky Balboa was made, so that's all I have to say about this movie. 5, not good, but still decent and somewhat memorable and also great in some fans' opinions, but in my opinion, it's not that good. It should have focused more on Rocky rather than Tommy Gunn and Rocky Jr. So, that's all I have to say. So, comment, like, and subscribe, and stay tuned for The Amazing Spider-Man 2 and Rocky 6. Yeah, Rocky 6, not Rocky Balboa.